Hello friend, thanks for joining my channel. Myself Amit, and today we will go through Docker interview questions that usually ask in companies. So let's begin. So I have created this particular GitHub gist file on GitHub. Okay, so I will share this particular link in the description. So please get it from there. So let's begin. So I have created this list of interview questions and answers, and we will go through it one by one. So these are the top important interview questions that usually ask in interviews. Okay, so hope this will be very helpful for you. So first question in this interview list is, what is the difference between Docker and virtual machine? So Docker container share the host OS kernel and are lightweight and starting in minutes. So if you see this diagram, so this is this is server with Docker container. So in this case, whatever containers we are running, that shares the same operating host OS operating system. Okay, and it is lightweight and starts in seconds. Okay, but virtual machine include a full guest OS operating system and are heavier and take minutes to boot. So if you see this diagram to understand, so we can see host on the top of host operating system, whatever virtual machine is running, it has its own separate guest OS. Okay, and apart from that, then we will run our application with its dependencies, beans and libraries. Okay, so from this we can understand that Docker containers are lightweight and it takes less resources, and in case of virtual machine, it is taking a lot of resources and disk space, so this is heavier. Okay, so in few scenarios, this virtual machine is useful. In few scenarios, containers are useful. Okay, so most of the cases in and nowadays in the companies, virtual these containers are used, okay, instead of virtual machine. In older days, people used to have like virtual machines for running applications. Okay, so this is our first question. So let's move to the next question. Define a Docker image versus Docker container. Okay, so what is the difference between these two? Okay, so let's understand. So Docker image is a read-only template with code, libraries and dependencies. Okay, and container is a running instance of that image. So what it means it so consider like we are running we have created one Docker file. Okay, so this Docker file contains all the instructions that we want in our container. Okay, so once like we build using Docker build, so it creates a Docker image. So Docker image just like a resource. Okay, it is not running right now. Okay, so once you run Docker run, in that case only like it start running and exposing our application. Okay, so to understand it in other way, so image is nothing but it is a class, and container is an object that is a running instance of this particular image. Okay, so that is the difference between Docker image and Docker container. So let's move ahead. So what is the third question is, what is the Docker lifecycle? So these are the different life cycles are there. So Docker created, okay, created, container created but not started, and then running state is there, process is active. Okay, so when we run Docker run, in that case it is in this state, Docker running. We can pause also by using Docker pause command. So when it is paused, so process suspended, and stop process killed but container persist. Okay, so we can stop also container by using Docker stop command, and we can delete also the container, so container got removed. So these are the different Docker lifecycle. Okay, so let's move ahead. So what is Docker registry? So this is the another question, important question. So it is a storage and distribution system for named Docker images. So whenever we create a Docker image and we want to like share it with different teams or different people, so in that case we deploy that image in Docker registry. Okay, so there are two type of registries are there: public registry and private registry. So example of public registry is Docker Hub. So let's see. So here if you see like this is a registry for Docker images. So we can see lot of images are present for AI for different purpose. Okay, so different categories are also there. We can search any specific required image by using this search box. Like take example Ubuntu. Okay, so type image. Okay, so we can see like different architecture also we can choose, and then we can see the result. Okay, so Ubuntu, let's write complete. Okay, Ubuntu official image. So this is public registry. So likewise we can create private registry also, so that whatever application we have created, it should not be exposed to external world. Okay, so they should not like misuse our application. So in that case, so we can create our private registry also in different clouds. So all cloud providers, they provide a different type of registries, a Docker registry like ECI, ECR or ACR. Also we can use this third-party softwares also like JFrog, okay, or Artifactory. So this is Docker registry. This is another important question. So let's move ahead. So another important question is what is the purpose of Docker namespace? So namespace provide isolation. They ensure a container has its own view of the underlying system, like PID, network, or volume, or user, or IPC, without seeing other containers or host. So let's understand with this image. Okay, so all the containers are running on the host. Okay, but to provide the isolation between two different containers or multiple containers, so there is namespace and CG group. Okay, so namespace like limits what you can see, and CG group limits how much you can see. So these are very important concept, namespaces and CG group, and these are usually asked in interview questions. Okay, so hope you got this question. Okay, so let's move ahead. So next part in this interview question, Docker interview question, is related to Docker files and commands. So this is another important section that usually asked in interviews. Okay, so first question in that, or sixth question, we can say like what is the difference between copy and add instruction? So whenever we are creating Docker file, okay, so inside that we mention either copy or add. So usually this question asked in interviews. Okay, what is the difference? So let's understand. So copy command like copies a local file from the host to the container. So usually it copies the file from host to inside the container. Okay, so for that we use copy and whatever files we want and the destination folder. Okay, but add command is also do the same thing but with little bit twist. Okay, can do the same but also extract tar files automatically. Okay, and can download files from the remote URLs. Okay, so whatever like copy command it is doing, same thing add command also do, but on top of that it provide two different important functionalities. So consider like we are copy tar file, okay, or like a zip file uh, from from local machine into the containers. In that case it automatically extract also, so we don't need like a separate command to extract the files. Okay, so automatically extract and put into the destination folder. Okay, and other important use is it download the remote files and copy into the destination folder. Okay, so not just from like local machine, we can download from internet also, like or any URL or IP address. Okay, so like this. Okay, so this is also important question. So let's move ahead. So other question is like difference between CMD and entry point. This is also important. So let's understand. So CMD sets a default command or parameter that are completely replaced if you provide any argument at the end of Docker run. Okay, so inside the Docker file we usually mention like this: CMD echo and hello. Okay, so just for example, this is one like CMD is mentioned inside the Docker file. So what will happen when we are running that particular image after build? So if we run Docker run image, so what will happen? The output will be hello, because we have mentioned CMD as echo hello, but we can override this. Okay, if you want to override this. Okay, so what we can do, if we run Docker run same image, but instead of if we want to override this, we can write ls. So what will happen by writing the command like this, it will override this command. Okay, so instead of echo hello, it will run ls. Okay, and it will ignore the echo hello. Okay, so this is CMD. And what is entry point then? So entry point sets the fixed executable for the container. Any argument passed to the docker run are appended to it rather than replacing it. So in case of CMD, it gets replaced. Okay, if we pass some extra parameters, so this will replace with this parameter. Okay, this particular command will run, but entry point we can't replace it. Okay, so whatever we mention entry point inside the docker file, that would not be replaced. Okay, instant whatever extra parameters we are passing, that will append to this. Okay, so consider like this is one command docker run. Okay, an image mentioned, and dash a we have mentioned. So what will happen? It will execute ls dash a. Okay, it will not replace this. So this is the difference between CMD and entry point. This is very important question. Usually 99% this ask in interviews. Okay, so next one, what is the difference between docker run and docker start? Okay, very simple. Docker run creates a new container, okay, from scratch from docker image, uh, okay, and starts it. And docker start, so usually it restart an existing stop container. So in past, like we have run one container and then we stopped it. Okay, so to run again that stopped container, we can use docker start. Okay, so this is the difference between docker run and docker start. Next question is, what is a multi-stage docker file? Okay, or multi-stage build in docker? So answer is a method in docker file to use multiple from instruction. Okay, so when we are creating a docker file, inside that we mention multiple from instruction. Okay, so like this, if you see, consider this is a docker file, there are multiple from instructions we have mentioned. Okay, and you build artifact in one stage. So consider this is the first from is a one stage, second from is a second stage, and third and final would be the final stage. Okay, so there are multiple stages are there, and you build a artifact in one stage. Okay, like compiling Java or .NET or Go code, and copy all those like artifacts from earlier stage into the final stage. Okay, so consider like we are building .NET or Java application. So in first stage we will use like from command, where like we will use the image which contain the tools to compile and build the generate the artifact. Okay, and in the second image also we can do some operation related to generating some artifact. Okay, usually second stage is not required. After first like compilation, we use the runtime image. Okay, so consider now we are just using the runtime image. Okay, instead of a very huge image with lot of like tools for compilation. So in the final stage we will just use smaller image, just runtime, which contains only runtime like .NET runtime or Java or some other applications or language runtime. Okay, and after that we just copy from the earlier stages whatever artifacts we have generated by using such command, copy from, and whatever like name we have given for the earlier stages, and copy uh, artifacts, whatever artifacts at particular location generated, so we are copy from that location into uh, into the new location, new destination. Okay, so like this, and after that we run the CMD command which will start the application. Okay, so what is the purpose of this is like by using multi-stage docker file we generate smaller images, so that image contain only runtime instead of all the tools that are required to build and compile the application. Okay, so this is very important question, multi-stage docker file. Okay, so we can understand here like, so in the first stage like we have OS, all the build tools, dependencies, source code, and then we generate the artifact. Okay, same like we can do some other operations. Okay, and after that in the final, this is our runtime image. So this is minimal OS based language runtime, and whatever the artifacts and production dependencies are there, only those things we will have here instead of all the source code and unnecessary files. Okay, so this will reduce the size. Okay, and our image or docker container will run very efficiently and fast. So let's move ahead. So how do you reduce the size of docker image? Okay, same related to this. So there are multiple ways are there to reduce the size of docker images. So first of all we can use like minimal base image. Okay, so whatever from we are mentioned, so we should use like very small image like Alpine Linux. Okay, so which contains only required softwares to run our application. On top of that, we can install whatever is required. Only software which is required, we will install that. Otherwise, if we use like very huge image like Ubuntu, so that will contain lot of softwares which are not required to execute our application. Okay, and those cause security issues, and we need to patch that image regularly. So reduce that security vulnerability, we use minimal base image. Okay, so apart from that, other way is like multi-stage build that we went through in the previous question. Apart from that, like if you have multiple run commands, so instead of uh, writing run commands on separate lines, we can combine the run command by using and this ampersand symbol. Okay, and then it will be single run command, but it will reduce the size of our image, because there will be only single image layer. Instead of, it will create like separate layers. Okay, apart from that, we can use dot docker ignore file. Okay, it is same as dot get ignore. So what it will do, like it will ignore all the files which is mentioned inside it, from copy into the docker image. Okay, or docker container. So these are the multiple different ways by using which we can reduce the size of docker image. Okay, so let's move ahead. So again, what is the docker ignore file used for? So as we went through. Okay, so it prevents the specific files or directories. Okay, uh, which got generated when we are doing the development locally. Okay, before or doing testing. So those like node modules or git or such type of things from being sent to the docker daemon. Okay, or in docker image during the build context, speeding up build and improving the security. Okay, so again, this is very important question. So let's move ahead to the next section, part 3, storage and networking. Okay, so first question in this is, how do you persist data in Docker? So by using volume and bind mount, we can like persist our data. Okay, if we are not using this, then what will happen? Without this, data is lost when the container removed, because the container's writable layer is temporary. Okay, so if we are running some container, we generate some data which is not important. In that case, volumes and bind mount is not required. But if we are using some important application like database or some application which generate some important data, so we can't take risk of storing such important data inside the Docker. Instead of that, we store those data outside the container in volume or bind by using volume and bind mounts. Okay, so this is very important question. So next question is, what is the difference between volume and bind mount? Okay, so let's understand this thing. So volume managed by Docker. Okay, easier to backup and migrate. Okay, so automatically it creates the volume at a particular location, this particular location, var lib Docker volumes. Okay, and bind mounts map a specific file or directory on the host machine to the container, depending on the host directory and structure. So in case of volume, what happened, whatever volume name or directory is created, that got created automatically at this location inside this folder, volumes folder, with some random name. Okay, but consider like you have one specific folder that you have created in a particular drive, and you want to map that into Docker container. So in that case, we use bind mount. Okay, so it maps a specific file or directory on the host machine to the container. So that is the difference. Okay, so both volume and bind mount we use to store our important data outside the Docker container. Okay, so that even if like Docker container get crash or restart or stop, in still we would have our data persist. Okay, and then when again that particular Docker container come back online, so it will automatically bind to the specific volume. Okay, so again, this is important question. So let's move ahead. So next question is, explain the default Docker network drivers. Okay, so there are different network drivers are there: bridge, host, none, and overlay. So first one is bridge, that is the default driver. Okay, and containers on the same bridge can talk to each other. Okay, so if you want to make some network, and all the containers that are running on that particular network should talk to each other, so in that case we use bridge. Okay, in other one is host. So remove the network isolation, container shares the host IP networking. Okay, so this is straightforward. None means there is no networking access. Okay, so no one can access it. That particular container is running standalone without any communication with other containers or network. Okay, overlay used for multi-host communication. Okay, usually used in Kubernetes or Swarm. All right, so let's move to the next question. How do you connect two containers? So again, same related to networking. So you create a user defined bridge network. Okay, so by using this command we create a network, docker network create, and the network name, and attach both the container to it. So let's see with one example. So first of all we will create one uh, uh, network by using this command, docker network create, and whatever name we want to give, and whatever like uh, containers are running, okay, that we want to that those containers should share the same network. In that case we have to start that particular docker containers by passing the network name. So first one is like db container, and we are passing network backend net, which is same as this one. Okay, so what we want, like we want this redis, sorry, like this is a redis. Okay, redis like db. So we want like this redis should be part of this particular network, so that's why we are passing the name. Again we are running the other container that is consider like its name is that image is like my app image. Okay, and we want like this two container, this particular application should use redis. Okay, so in that case we want this particular container should also be part of this particular network. Okay, so that both will be part of the same network and they can talk to each other. But if we create one more docker container without this particular network flag, okay, so that would not be the part of this network, and that particular container would not be able to connect with these two containers. Okay, so that is the benefit of creating separate network. Okay, so let's move ahead. So next section is related to operations and troubleshooting. So let's say like how we can make operations means like how we can make our local development very easy and efficient. Okay, without so consider like we are creating a microservice type of application which could have like 5 or 10 different containers, and if we have to do the operation end to end, we need to run those containers all together. Okay, otherwise that microservice would not work properly. So first question in this section is what is Docker Compose? So for this purpose only, like what I explained, like microservice application with lot of services, in that case Docker Compose is very useful. A tool for defining and running multi-container Docker application. It uses a YAML file. Usually it is docker compose.yaml to configure services, network, volume in a single command, and we can run whole application, whole microservice application by using single command like docker compose up, and it will run all the containers or all the like application which is part of that microservice application. So usually like with instead of separate line we are mentioning like run this command then run this command. So instead of doing this we create one YAML file, that is docker compose YAML file, and we mention all the container that should run, that should be the part of that single application. Okay, and which network we mention everything like related to networking, which networking they are part of, which volume they are using. Okay, what is the dependency, which container should start first. So everything we mention in docker compose, and this is a very huge topic. I think I have created one separate video related to it. You can go through it to understand it deeply. So but this is docker compose. Next question is how do you debug a running container? So consider one container is running. Okay, so in that case, if you have to troubleshoot, if you have to check like what is the why it is running slow or what is the error happening. So in that case, okay, so usually this is a very important question. So there are multiple ways are there. We can check the logs. Okay, that is the first way. For that we run the command docker logs. Whatever the container ID is there, we mentioned that, and we will able to see on the logs. Okay, it will display all the logs. We can follow the logs also by passing dash f one flag, and we can follow the logs and do the troubleshooting. So this is one way. Other way is like to log in into or enter into that particular container and run the commands from the shell. Okay, so for that we use docker exec and interactive way and container id, and we access the shell, and after that we can run all the commands inside it and check what is going on. Okay, so yeah, and this is the way. Either we can use bash. If the bash is not available, then we can use other shell like normal shell as such. Okay, so let's move to next question. So what does a docker system prune do? Okay, it is straightforward. It clean up unused data. It remove the stopped containers network not used by at least one container, all dangling images, and build cache. So usually it is used to clean up all the artifacts that generated due to our docker operations. Okay, different operation that is unused artifacts. Okay, so usually we use docker system prune. So we should run this to clean up our hard drive, otherwise we will face some issue related to space or memory. Okay, so this is very important. After that, like what is dangling images? So images that have lost their tag, okay, usually display as none and none. This usually happens when you build a new image with the same name and tag as an existing one. The old one become dangling. Okay, so if you are creating multiple images, doing testing with the same tag and image name, usually this happens. Okay, it creates dangling images, and by using like a docker system prune we can remove that. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, after that the last question is, how do you ensure a container restart automatically if it crashes? Okay, so also like this is important. So usually when we are starting a docker run, okay, in that case we should pass the dash dash restart flag. Okay, if we are passing the restart always, so whenever that particular container got restarted or due to any reason or any error, so in that case it will restart fresh. Okay, again, so that so why this is important? Because in that case like we would not have to like log in and check and start if it is stopped. Okay, so this is important flag, automatically starts. Okay, if it got stopped due to some error or hang or something that, okay, restart on failure. Okay, this is instead of always we can pass on failure. So restart only if the container exists with a non-zero exit code. Okay, so in that case only it will restart only in the case of on failure, and this is always. So that's all I have from my side. Okay, these are the important questions that usually ask in interviews, okay, related to docker. So if you have any other questions, important interview questions related to docker, please let me know that I have not covered in this list, so I will definitely add that into my list. So thank you for watching. Hope this was very helpful for you. Please like my video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.